Hey guys, welcome back to 1776 or Bust. So today we're going to take a look at a gun that I just put together, which is this right here. This is the Zev. This is the Zev OZ9C. Now, this is kind of a custom job in regards to the fact that I did not buy this directly from Zev. I actually took my time slowly because these guns are pretty expensive. I mean, if you get one of these guns that looks similar to this from Zev directly, you're probably looking at about $1,300. You might be able to get a little bit cheaper online, but on average, it's anywhere from $1,300 to $1,400. Now, this is a compact grip, so it is very much so a Glock 19 size. So for those of you out there who like that size, this is going to be the ideal fit for you. They do have kind of the X grip, which is more or less going to be like a 19X grip, which is kind of cool. And obviously, it has the same length of slide, so you don't necessarily need any other components. You just would have to buy a lower, which is kind of the cool part of having a Zev, is just the modularity of design. So again, this does have the removable trigger group here, so it's very much like a SIG. This entire piece or component comes out from inside and over obviously the trigger, but also this steel Picatinny rail. So this entire thing comes out of the lower, and then you can buy your slide, you can buy your barrel, you can buy all the other components separately, or you can buy it all together at once. It's really depending on what your budget is and how much you want to spend overall. You know, for me, the gun took probably, I'd say, maybe about 3.5 months to really just buy all the pieces. You know, obviously I don't want to spend too much money right up front, so I go and gradually buy all the components separately. Did it really save me a ton of money? Probably saved me overall maybe $200. I'd say probably about $200 is where I would say it was the most savings I got. Obviously, I shopped around trying to find the cheapest parts of the gun I could find, the internal components, and then obviously the lower and really the barrel. The sights I already had, these are going to be Spartan sights from Ameriglo, so they fit perfectly, no issues with that. I did wind up buying a Zev barrel. Now, the only thing I can say right now is that the initial barrel I bought for this thing was this barrel right here, as you guys can see. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. But this is actually a Zafiri precision barrel that I bought for it. And the only thing I can think of, this barrel wasn't actually fitting correctly in the slide. So the slide wasn't able, and again, the gun is empty, but the slide was not able to actually go all the way back into battery. So it's probably about 1/8 of an inch actually behind where it should have been. I actually wound up buying 2 different guide rods thinking it was the guide rod, but ultimately it wound up being just the way the barrel fit inside of the actual slide and the frame. So I actually wound up just taking the Zafiri precision barrel and putting it into the MR920, which kind of gives it a nice little look with that chameleon look to it. So it's pretty cool. It does work, no issues. It locks back in place. And of course, you can see, more importantly, that it is flush against the actual frame. Now, in regards to this gun, which is the OZ9C, you can see that the frame does fit exactly along the side of the slide. So that's kind of cool. This is their bronze coated barrel. So it is actually a pretty nice looking barrel. And I actually have an L2D Combat guide rod in there. So you can see that. It's a fluted guide rod, which is pretty cool. But all the components were pretty nice. I have to say, it actually came together really nicely. The trigger on the gun is, you know, it's decent. It's not terrible. Overall, it's got a nice light reset, a very functional reset too. And I have to say that just, you know, kind of testing that gun out, it does feel pretty good in the hand. Now the trigger pull, let's see what that looks like. There's your trigger. So you have a little bit of mushiness and then it breaks. Your reset is a little long, but again, a nice tactile, nice audible reset. So the trigger does feel pretty good. It also does have, on this particular slide, the optic cut on the top. I forget what the name of the slide was. I actually wound up buying it a little bit cheaper on eBay of all places in order to be able to kind of afford the slide. The actual 2 parts of this gun that were actually the most expensive were actually going to be the complete trigger control group, which ran me, I think it was about $300, $350 around there. And then the slide cost me, I think, I have to think about this. The slide, I think, costs about $350 as well. So in between the actual trigger control group and the slide, you're looking at about $700 right out of the bat. The lower I bought was only $40. I got that on a good, well-known website that most gun people know about. And then obviously the barrel I wound up buying, and that cost me about $150. So I think overall it was actually a much cheaper build than buying it from the factory complete. Overall, I'm not too unsatisfied with it. I mean, there's really not much else to really talk talk about the gun. The serrations on the slide are actually pretty decent. They're not too like nasty like the PDP or, you know, the Canix, but they are definitely functional, definitely usable. It's got a good amount of traction to it. So I would not be concerned that somehow this isn't going to work. Takedown is very standard like a Glock. You basically just pull it back a quarter of the way, remove the slide, and everything inside is very nicely done. You could see that I have all the Zev components and the internals, and that even ran you about 110 bucks. So again, it's definitely not a cheap gun. A lot of people will say it's a Gucci Glock gun. I'm sure Bald and Curious will love it. But one of the things I have to say is that it's actually not too bad. I do like the way it feels. It does have a significant amount of weight in the gun, especially on the front. You could actually feel where that steel pick rail is on there, and you definitely feel it. You know, the barrel does kind of protrude a little bit from the front, so very typical kind of like a Glock barrel, but it's very nice. It's a nice looking gun, feels pretty good in the hand. The ergos are pretty good. I'm not gonna lie, they're not the best, but they're actually pretty solid. I mean, it's a fairly comfortable gun. You can see that the beaver tail does extend back to your knuckle there, so you don't have to worry about slide bite, which is always kind of a consideration with how low the Glocks originally sit. Now, if I was going to compare the MR920 to this gun, I mean, there's a significant difference in weight. Obviously, you have the steel pick rail versus the polymer. The ergonomics are a little bit better, I think, on the MR920. And honestly, the trigger on the Zev is better than the MR920. At least it feels that way. This has not been shot yet. I'm going to do a range report once I shoot it. I'm hoping to get out on Sunday. If not, I'll be going out to the range next weekend, and I'm going to test this out and see how it does. I'm fairly certain this is going to be a pretty decent gun. I think overall it looks nice. It feels pretty good in the hand. The texturing on the actual grip is fairly decent. It's a pretty aggressive texturing on here. You could also see it does have it on the bottom of your fingers here. The only thing I don't understand is why not here. You can also see the back of the back strap has it, but again, very smooth here, which I can understand that because that's where most of your hand is going to sit as you recover from that recoil. So maybe they don't want you to necessarily have that abrasive texturing against that part of your hand, which is totally understandable. You do have your kind of your finger memory pad right there, which has the same type of texturing on the grip. And you can see it's got a pretty sizable mag release here. Now, if I was going to complain about anything, and hopefully I have a magazine, which I do. So this is your standard Glock magazine right here. These do take the Glock magazines, and again, fits perfectly, locks back, no issues, right? The only thing that I've noticed that I don't like about this right now is the mag release. So I'm actually pushing down on that mag release, and that magazine is not releasing. It's kind of coming out just a little bit, but it does not fall free. And that's one thing I don't like about the gun. So if any of you out there have a Zev OZ9C and you've had the same issues, what did you do to kind of fix that? Interestingly enough, I have a couple of 19X magazines, pop them in that bad boy, and they come right out. It's only the 19 mags that don't do it for me. This is the MR920. And you can see it falls loose, no issues. As a matter of fact, it rattles a little bit because there's a lot of room inside of the actual, room or the area for the magazine. So it fits in really nicely, comes out. This one is a little bit tighter. So you can see there's some resistance right about there. Then it locks in place. But again, it doesn't release the magazine. So that's kind of a bummer. I'm not really sure why that's happening, but I'd like to know if you know why that's happening, then maybe tell me. So other than that, so far, I mean, the Zev has been a really nice looking firearm. It feels pretty good in the hand. I'm very excited to shoot it because I think it's going to be a very nice shooting firearm. If it shoots anything like the MR920 did just the last week I was out with this gun, I can't wait to go out and shoot it. So look forward to making that video for you guys. Again, leave some comments down below. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please subscribe, thumbs up, share the videos, subscribe to Patreon, whatever else you want to do. It helps the channel kind of grow. And like I said, guys, and as I will always say to you, have a great night, stay safe, and freedom is never free.